Let's talk about tips on how to document your voice of youth in photos and videos. There are three things that you need to remember when doing a documentation for the voice of youth. Number one, remember that you're doing a story. You're telling a story to your audience. Number two, the video/photo quality. Number three is the audio clarity. Let's talk about the story first. Please remember that you are telling a story to your audience, and because you're telling a story to your audience, there are five elements of a good story that I'd like to share with you. Number one, character. Character. Who is involved in the story? Who are the actors in the story? Or what is the subject of the story? That is very important for you to consider to begin with, because the story revolves around that, the character. Number two, conflict or / challenge. What are the conflicts or the challenges that the character is facing? That's very important for you to consider, because this conflict is the factor that you need to overcome in order for you to build a good story, momentum of the story. Number three is care. In the journey, you will always encounter someone who cares enough to show you the way. Who is that person or persons or people that is responsible in showing you the right way? And then number four is the course of action. That's something that you need to emphasize to your listeners or to your audience. What are the steps that this person who showed you care, that he introduced in order for you to overcome the challenge or the conflict that you're involved in, or the story as far as the story is concerned. And number five is the change. What is the result? What is the outcome of it? Let's talk about number two, which is video/photo quality. When you're doing photo or videos, you have to remember at least three things. Number one, specs. I know you understand about specs. Specification. What are the specs that is required of you? Okay? When it comes to specs, some people are requiring you to submit 1080 or at 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second cinematic, or some people are requiring you to submit 4K. Whatever is the specs, please ask in advance what is required of you, because that is very important. Because sometimes the specs that is required is too high and you're submitting a very low quality video. It's very important for you to remember that. Number two is the composition. Composition is very important. When you actually go into the website, some experts will talk to you lengthily about composition, but let me just mention some. First, lighting. That is very important. This is the reason why we have so many lights here. Thanks, Tony, for putting the light. Somebody said, amateurs worry about the brand. Experts worry about the light. So it's very important for you to consider lighting. Number two, framing. How do you frame your subject? Number three, rule of thirds. That's also very important. Dynamic range or contrast. You also need to remember that, because you want to present, it's possible that you have a very good story, very good script, but then the quality of the video is not very good. So you need to match your story with a good quality video. That's very important too. And number three is you need to have a stabilized video, steady. So you need to use a tripod, or you have to have a steady hand when you're doing recording or when you're doing photos, because it's very important for you to have a steady, not a blurry video, not a blurry photos. Again, as far as video/photo is concerned, You need to be able to present a quality video or a quality photo by remembering these three things. Number one, remember the specs that is required of you. Number two, remember the composition. And number three, please remember that you need to record it in a stabilized or steady shot. The last but not the least is, let's talk about audio clarity. This is one of the most important in documentation. Even if your story is powerful and your composition is very good as far as the quality is concerned, but the audio is not clear, then your message cannot be understood. That is why you need to have clear audio. So please remember these three things. It's very important for you to remember this. Number one is the story that you're telling to your audience. Number two, the video quality. And number three, the audio clarity. What you are producing or creating is a material that is the source of inspiration, not just to the people outside the church, but more so for the people who are inside the church, our church members, because when they see this powerful story, they'll be blessed and they'll be encouraged to replicate this story in their personal life. Stories are actually locally produced, but the impact is global. So I encourage you to inspire others through this documentation class.